My cardinal rule, even though it goes against some of common wisdom, is that you need to pick the platform that you enjoy the most. It's not just about where your customers are. I mean, all of that is important, but if you're trying to show up authentically as yourself, as the founder, build in public, like do all of these things, I really feel strongly that you should just pick the platform that you like the most.
Welcome to The Narrative, a series where I interview the best storytellers in tech. I'm really psyched to share my conversation with Maria LaMagna Morales. Maria is best known for leading socials at A16Z and is now building Press Publish, a boutique advisory helping founders with content strategy and execution, without the bloat of a traditional agency.
The platforms are becoming increasingly different. Posting on X is so different from posting on TikTok, from posting on Instagram, from posting on LinkedIn. So I think if you're going to do it yourself, you should pick the one that you like.
Maria has been thinking deeply about this space for years, and I loved getting her take on all things social and beyond. Okay, here's Maria. Well, Maria, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm super excited to chat.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat too.
Awesome. Obviously, let's just get into your backstory super quick. Obviously, you started in journalism and then kind of made the switch into venture. So I'm curious, obviously, what got you into journalism, and then what kind of prompted that switch?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, it's definitely maybe like an non-traditional path to tech and venture. I did start my career in journalism, studied journalism, did a lot of really traditional journalism jobs, but I was always more drawn to the digital side and the social side. But at that time, 15 years ago, I felt like I wanted to make sure that in the journalism world, I was taken really seriously and not maybe just pigeonholed as someone that only does social, which I think we've come really far since then, and people respect social a lot more than maybe they once did. But because of that, I decided to also make sure that I was growing my editorial chops, and I was a reporter following a beat. I worked at different business publications. And so I really wanted to show that I could do both, even though I kind of had in the back of my mind, I want to do this more digital and social thing in the future. So in college, I actually did an internship at CNN, which kind of became my dream place to work. And I saw an executive there named Meredith Artley, and she kind of became my North Star because she was sort of the chief digital officer, but she was very much in the news, in the newsroom, not separate. She was talking about things like headlines and how to increase traffic month over month and using the latest tools and all of those things. So she kind of became my role model for what I was hoping to be. So fast forward through those different journalism jobs in business journalism. Eventually, I was recruited to work on CNN Plus, which was a dream because of my feelings about CNN. And as we all know, CNN Plus wasn't long for this world, unfortunately, and we were all laid off. So which I don't regret that at all, because I do think that going toward the more cutting edge tools and products is always something that has excited me and I think has helped a lot in my career, to be honest. So amazing experience, regardless of the outcome. But I was back on the job market and I saw a job opening at Andreessen Horowitz. And at the time, they had a separate tech publication from the main brand called Future. And they needed someone, to do audience engagement and kind of oversee social for Future. So it seemed like more of a one-to-one, jump from where I was, because it was, a separate sort of news website. But shortly after I joined, they decided not to continue with Future. So it ended up in kind of a little bit of a promotion for me, because our CMO asked me if I would be willing to take on social at large for the firm, and I did. So that's kind of what happened about 3 years ago. And I spent 3 years kind of rebuilding and rebuilding the way Andreessen Horowitz was doing social media at the time.
Super interesting. Well, I want to ask you about Future because, there was obviously a lot of hype when it launched and people were excited. I remember thinking, wow, that's quite a bold move, and also a sign of commitment that a venture firm is literally setting up an editorial arm. And very few examples existed at the time. I know obviously Stripe has works in progress, and they're known for this very editorial centric approach too, but not a lot of companies were starting their own publications. So could you did you have an inside look into what made Future possible, and then what led to its kind of downfall as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say what I'm publicly allowed to say, which is, my boss, the CMO, Margit van Makers, really kind of pioneered this idea of putting content first. And that's one of the ways that Andreessen Horowitz grew from the very beginning. They were really, I think, cutting edge about showing the general partners in that way, really signaling their thought leadership by actively writing instead of just waiting for publications to cover them. And so she, I think, was one of the first people really, even in the industry widely, to come up with that sort of plan and idea. And, we all know some of Mark's best known op-eds, software is eating the world, those kinds of things. And so that was all part of her overall plan. And then that eventually translated into, what if we do even more with this? What if we highlight different voices, expand beyond just the firm? And then I can't say too much about why they decided not to continue with it, because I don't think that's public. But basically, what I will say is that not a ton changed, because the firm still produced a ton of content. It just was under the label of Andreessen Horowitz instead of the label of Future. And they kind of weren't highlighting those outside voices anymore. It became more about the firm and everyone that works at the firm and the portcos. So it was kind of, I guess I can say it was basically a decision to highlight what the firm was doing and what the portcos were doing, instead of anyone else in the space that maybe they decided not to give as much highlight to anymore. But content definitely didn't go away. It actually expanded. So, during the course of while I was there, not only were the general partners writing about their own investment theses, but Mark and Ben launched a show, the Mark and Ben Show, Ben and Mark Show, actually. And, there was the A16Z podcast. So, many newsletters. So social exploded. So, it was definitely still content, just under a slightly different label, but the strategy kind of remained the same.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is actually very interesting, right? And something that sets like A16Z apart, where like the buy-in that partners have like internally, like to create content. I feel like a lot of firms, and like obviously I speak to a lot of like content folks who work in firms, and one of the challenges for them is like always, how do you get like partners invested in this? Like, how do you get them to care? Because most people actually don't care. Like they kind of know it's important, and they'll kind of pay lip service to the fact that, okay, yeah, we should do content and we should do something. But when it actually comes to it, like, when it comes to like the day-to-day, like week-to-week grind of actually creating, editing, polishing, publishing, that just doesn't happen. So is there any like, I'm curious, like what A16Z does or cultivates internally that like creates that atmosphere where it's like, okay, hey, like content is super important.
Definitely. I think not just at A16Z, but this was something that I saw even in my journalism days, when people were, again, this was a while ago, but some reporters had this like really traditional view that social media wasn't important, and, their stories were so good that they didn't need to do social media or those kinds of things. So I think in both cases, it was similar, where I think people start to see the proof where, there's a healthy level of competition where you're like, oh, wait a second, that general partner, I'm starting to see their profile really rise, and they're being asked to go on this podcast, they're being asked to go on this news show. And I think it's because they're writing and posting about it and stuff. So I think there sometimes has to be a level of, you start with a small number of people who are already bought in and understand the value. And then once they kind of become your ambassadors for it, other people can see that it really matters and will start to do it once they see that proof. So I think there's always going to be some people who just, stick their heels in and are like, I'm not going to do it no matter what, both in journalism and in venture capital. But I think a healthy level of competition is, something that kind of helps.
No, I love that. Yeah. And like, are there any like specific workflows or tactics that y'all used on a day-to-day basis that like helped you and the general partners kind of create content consistently?
Yeah, I can't speak as much to that because I wasn't editing them. I was more, the latter end of that once the content was already made. But I think what I would say is, obviously these are super, super, super busy people. And so anything that you can do to make it easier on them is always better. I think now that we have, every AI transcription tool available, I think that asking someone to sit down and write something is something that very few people feel comfortable with. There are some people do love to write, and obviously the rise of Substack and stuff, like there's a lot of big fans of Substack at A16Z. There were investors in Substack, but that's not for everyone. So I think being able to do maybe like a 30-minute call or, however long they have, transcribing it and turning it back to them in a written form is something I'm seeing more and more of, even with the founders that I work with now. Like, it's just a big ask for someone to sit down and write a piece out. It's less of an ask to say, do you have 30 minutes for me to, do a call with you, ask my questions, get it all transcribed, and then turn it back to you in a format that's ready for LinkedIn or ready for Substack or whatever it might be.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like around that as well, like I also feel like A16Z kind of, even the founders they invest in, like, there's almost this focus on it almost feels like they're like media trained out of the box, like so many of these founders. I also feel like the latest, I was just talking to someone yesterday about like how the latest generation of like, especially if you look at the YC cohort and stuff, like, folks are just so much better at like socials, so much better at like content creation than they were. So I think this whole trope of like the awkward technical founder, of course, exists, but it's not as prominent as before,
I agree with you very much. I think that people are experimenting with the tools a lot more. And there was kind of this whole movement of going direct that, like Gary Tan of YC was talking about founder mode and all these things. And I think it really did change how a lot of founders thought about being more public. And so I'm seeing a massive wave now of founders that want to be more public and, like you're saying, do it themselves. And so I think it is sort of a trial and error thing. The more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more you follow your other friends that are founders that do it, you pick up on things they're doing well. Like there's just much more conversation now around that this is a real skill. And I think to my earlier point about social media not being respected, I think now it is. And so people are like, I'm going to spend time and get good at this, whatever medium it is that they feel comfortable with. But I think that people really, really see the value of it now and probably see less of the value of having professional support behind it, which I definitely have mixed feelings about, but I certainly think that at least a little bit of support behind you helps make the content a little more polished, a little more complete. Like there's definitely this whole thing now about being more raw and, not being polished, which I think there's so much to be said for as well. But sometimes I think a little bit of support can just help you refine your message and be more clear. So it's not just about adding like aesthetic polish or, formality. I think it can be about like making sure that what you're saying is actually landing and is hitting the way you want it to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's actually a great segue into like what you're building now. Like you recently launched your own like advisory, and I'd love for you to talk about it and what the value proposition is, like, and like where you're going with Press Publish.
Thank you. Yeah. So while I was at Andreessen Horowitz, I saw a big need because I was a client of agencies. And I think what you see a lot from sort of the larger or more traditional agencies is that it's very much like a package, or at least that's what I experienced, that they were kind of quoting me these really high monthly or even annual agreements. And Andreessen Horowitz, even though it's obviously like an enormously successful firm, I think still has the ethos of a startup that's like, we're not going to spend money just to spend money. Like, don't put your hand in our pocket. Like, we're still going to be efficient here, right? Like, So I had to do a ton of negotiating with agencies to try to be like, we don't need all that. Like, we just need this. I can do most of this. I just need this. And so my whole thought after coming out of that was like, why do they not allow that? Like, why is there no more specialized, tailored support? And if Andreessen Horowitz doesn't want to spend money on it with good reason, founders who are much earlier in their journey certainly can't. So I kind of was thinking about all of my experiences and how I really got to know, well, like, what do you need? What do you really not need? What moves the needle? What doesn't move the needle? And instead of trying to have this super salesy approach, I have a much more, I'm stepping back and saying, you tell me, like, what is it that you need? I'm happy to use my expertise to tell you what I think you need and what I think you don't need. But I'm purposely keeping Press Publish, the agency, very small and boutique because I don't want to have all these overhead costs that then mean I have to pass those costs along to the founders. So yeah, my goal is to make it super founder friendly, flexible. You can itemize. I'm doing even just a launch package. Like if all you need is support around your launch, let's do that. Like if all you need is support for a few months, we can do that. Like whatever those things are, if you want to start small and then scale up as you raise, like whatever those things are, I just feel like that flexibility is important. And then also really knowing the space, because it makes me really nervous when I see founders sign on with agencies that don't have experience in the tech world and in venture. Like it's just a very different positioning than it is when you're trying to sell a consumer product. And it's not to say that it's impossible to figure out, but it is something that it takes a while to understand the language of it and how you want to position and who the other big players are in the space, what you should be saying, what you should not be saying. And I don't see a ton of, there are some, like there definitely are some, especially smaller operations like mine that are starting to pop up and help founders like that. But it's a big difference between hiring like a boldface name on, Madison Avenue, the stereotype of that versus like working with someone that's been on the inside and can say like, no, we don't need all that, So that's kind of how I'm telling. It's basically the agency I wish I could have hired when I was at Andreessen Horowitz.
Love that. Yeah, I feel like there's a place for these really small boutique agencies, especially today, right? Because founders do kind of need that flexibility, and needs obviously change over time. And I feel like sometimes, and this is something, again, like I was talking to with the previous guest, is like less is more, like especially today, right? And it's quite important for you to say, hey, like actually we don't need to do that. Whereas like the bigger agencies, the problem is like because they operate in this like kind of package model, it's really hard for them, for their own math to make sense. So they can't really be flexible because they have all these employees and whatever, right?
Yeah, I have empathy for that. But I agree. Saying no, I feel like, is one of the most important roles of someone doing social or content in the tech space, because there's just so much noise, so much like people pretending to be really good at this stuff. Like it honestly like does bother me a lot, genuinely, because I just don't want founders to be taken for a ride and like spend all their money in these ways that are unnecessary. And so it truly comes from like a passion for me, because I'm like, let me help you, like let me save you from spending all of that. Like you don't need to. So yeah, I think saying no to bad ideas, saying no to spending a lot of money, saying no to whatever those things are, is like a hard role, but one of the more important ones, because if you're just saying yes to everything, then like they don't need your expertise, right? Like you're not really adding value there.
Right. Yeah. And especially today where like, creating content is not expensive anymore. It's really more about like editing, right? It's about like deleting. And I wanted to get your take on AI.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, having taste. Like, I think that is something that is becoming a bigger and bigger differentiator. It's like, there's so much sameness. Like, and yeah, that's going to be a good segue into what we're about to talk about. But like, if everything can come out looking the same, or like everyone has access to the same tools, then your level of taste is what sets it apart. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, totally. And I also feel like, like it's always like a moving target, right? Like as the tools kind of democratize certain things, the bar for what's creative and different kind of shifts,
yes.
Right? And I'm just curious to get your take on AI. Like obviously it's completely changed the storytelling and marketing game. And there's a lot of like thoughts, opinions floating around. I'm curious to get your take, like where do you stand on that spectrum of, hey, this is like the end of creativity versus, hey, like this is a golden age for storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit I'm a little red pilled because obviously Andreessen Horowitz invests heavily in AI. So I've spent the last 3 years like understanding all the amazing things about AI. And I do use AI tools. I do like think that they're extremely important. And if you're not getting adept at them, you will be left behind. So I definitely think that they're hugely useful. I do think the thing you have to watch out for is just simply using them is not enough of an advantage anymore. And I think we saw, even it's moving so fast. And I think even a few months ago when people were playing around with like, here's me with a AI tool, like I'm a character, like those kinds of things, like that was novelty, 6 months ago, longer ago, probably 9 months ago to a year ago. And now if you're still doing that, like I do these 1-day summits for founders with some alumni of Y Combinator. And we did one a few months ago. And I was telling them like, that's out. Like, if you're just like, look, I did myself with AI, like that's not interesting anymore because everyone knows how to do that. So I'm interested in pushing that way further, where it's like, can you partner with an artist that like does this and is a digital artist and uses AI tools to make something that you've never seen? Like that is the level that we need to be at now, where it's like, or if you're extremely good at it yourself, not just like pretty good, but like you are very good at it and you're creating something that is like so cool that people have never seen it. Otherwise, it's just kind of like, yeah, we know, like we can all create that, So it's not simply being like, I know how to use Nano Banana is like not an advantage. So you have to really use it to create something out of the box and that people have never seen. Or I think you should go the total opposite. And it's sort of like when artists put out like an acoustic album or track where you're like, let's strip it all down and like just talk to the camera and don't do any things. Because I think those are kind of the two extremes where we're at now, where it's kind of like you either do nothing. And I personally love that. Like I've started really doing a lot with TikTok myself, and I absolutely love TikTok. And I think that that style has really changed all of social media across platforms and is here to stay. So I think you kind of have to pick a lane. It's either like, are you incredibly good at using AI visual tools, or are you going to go acoustic? And I think you just have to know yourself and like what makes sense for you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly why founders need someone, someone like you or like anyone, honestly, like an expert who is like plugged into the zeitgeist and like knows what's trending, what's not trending.
Yes. And founders are busy. Like what I'm finding with a lot of my clients is that they're like, I'm so heads down. They might not even have time to look at an edit. Like I have clients the other day that were like, just publish it. I don't even don't even show it to me. Like just post it from my X account, because they're so busy. And so I get that where it's like, it's my full-time job. It's my bread and butter. I'm reading all the stuff. I'm super plugged into all of this. And yeah, like if you were to try to spend that number of hours doing it like I am, you would not be spending the time building your product or going to conferences or whatever it is that they need to do. So I do feel like it's something you can outsource. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm more just saying like it's time intensive to be living online in that way. So it is something that some people are able to do and integrate into their day easily, but some founders are like, there's no possible way I could do that and still accomplish what I'm trying to do.
Right. Yeah. That's super interesting. I feel like, is there like a specific, like when we think about like the minimum viable content strategy for a founder, is there like a blueprint you have for founders, or is it more of a customizable thing where like you need to figure out, okay, like what space does this founder hang out in? Like for example, I'm guessing like if you're a cybersecurity startup founder, you don't want to be posting Sora videos of yourself with Sam Altman's digital clone or whatever. Like that's just not going to land.
Unless that's something that like is very true to you. So I guess, yeah, sort of my minimum viable content strategy, my cardinal rule, even though it goes against some of common wisdom, is that you need to pick the platform that you enjoy the most. It's not just about where your customers are. I mean, all of that is important, but that can go into an overall content strategy that also is about your co-founder, your company page, if you have one, like that can go into a cohesive strategy. But if you're trying to show up authentically as yourself, as the founder, build in public, like do all of these things, I really feel strongly that you should just pick the platform that you like the most, because I found that for myself. I found that for founders. Like I almost think of social media platforms as physical spaces. Like you're not going to keep showing up to a place that you don't like and you don't feel comfortable and you don't understand the language and you don't understand the sense of humor. Like I think that the platforms are becoming increasingly different, like the tone, because of the politics layer to all of this, like they are very, very different places. And posting on X is so different from posting on TikTok, from posting on Instagram, from posting on LinkedIn. So I think if you're going to do it yourself, you should pick the one that you like. I think if you're having a more cohesive overall strategy as part of, that can still be part of your minimum viable strategy. Like I think that you don't have to go crazy. I usually recommend on LinkedIn posting like once or twice a week. X, you need to be posting a lot more and interacting a lot more. So that's like at least a once a day. I probably recommend multiple times a day. Instagram, you got to be really aesthetically pleasing and post multiple times on your grid each week, probably 2 or 3, post to stories every single day. TikTok, you need to be posting pretty much every day. So, it just depends on the platform and like what you feel like you have time for and what you enjoy.
Interesting. Question there, like, do you see like certain verticals aligning with certain platforms? Like if you had to like say, hey, like these are the spaces that align, like I just feel like LinkedIn is obviously the big one for enterprise and these kinds of things like B2B. But I'm curious like how you see like founders leveraging TikTok and Instagram and some of these like slightly like non-obvious platforms.
Yeah, I think that TikTok, again, I'm a massive fan of TikTok, so take this with a grain of salt, but the way the algorithm works is so different from other platforms, and it's very easy to find the content that you're interested in and to find other people who are interested in that same content. And so I think if you're interested in posting on TikTok, the bigger question is, are you willing to show your face on camera every single day? Because that's like the bigger thing. But if you do, your content will find the right people. So that's, I think, I'm seeing actually a ton of investors on TikTok, a ton, like VCs, angel investors. Like I'm very much now entrenched in like founder talk. And yeah, there's a big society, like friends, colleagues forming in sort of founder and VC talk. Like that is absolutely popping off. So there's that.
I didn't know founder talk is a thing. That's
I mean,
super
it's
interesting.
an informal thing. Like, it's not like you can like join it, but like there's like a cohort, like very much there. You're like, oh
like
yeah,
a filter bubble of sorts. Yeah,
exactly. I think traditionally X was that. But I think there was a bit of a departure from X. And so what I'm seeing is that a lot of people who don't vibe with X are actually going to TikTok. So I'm seeing that a lot. I also think LinkedIn is just surging for everyone. And so whereas even like a year ago, it was really cringe and weird to be like posting on LinkedIn all the time, now it's very normal. And I'm seeing a massive surge in people who just want LinkedIn support, like founders that are like, I don't know what to do with LinkedIn. I know it's important. I know it's important for my ICP or my investors. Like, how do I write for LinkedIn? Like, that is definitely a thing. So I think there definitely are certain industries that are still really loyal to a certain platform. Like, I think gaming and like developers are very much into X, from what I'm seeing. Like, I feel like the super technical, I mean, a lot of people at A16Z still love X. Like, there's definitely like a deep like investor and technical community on X still that I don't really see other places besides like Hacker News and Reddit. Like, that's sort of like a package that are all like interacting in those places. But I think LinkedIn is increasingly becoming a place, along with TikTok, if you're willing to show your face, where people are flocking instead. So it's just, everything's changing like so fast. And
yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, it just depends so much on every industry. That's why, like, before even telling a founder like where I think they or their company or their co-founder should be posting, we definitely do like a big conversation around like their goals, their comfort level, what kind of stuff they're going to post, how much time they have, because there's like so many different factors that go into my recommendation of what social platform is right. And I also think you should start small and just like do one really well before you add in other things. So I try to be like really strategic around like what platform is right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I would almost feel like LinkedIn is having a moment because I feel like out of all these platforms, like reach is the most predictable on LinkedIn, where it's like pretty straightforward, right? Like someone, likes your post, people who follow them see your post. Like it's a very like clear kind of equation. Whereas with X, I mean, who the hell knows at this point, like how the algorithm works, right? And TikTok is also kind of, obviously like TikTok is a black box as well. Super engaging from a consumer perspective, but like if you're a creator, it's really hard to tell. Like there's all sorts of theories floating around about like what works and what doesn't, but I just feel like it's a little more unpredictable. So I feel like a lot of like social media folks like lean towards LinkedIn because that's where like they can kind of show the metrics at the end of the quarter or the month and be like, hey, like we did this is what happened,
Yeah, exactly. The whole metrics conversation is an interesting thing to get into too, because I just like that the way we traditionally track a lot of social metrics when it comes to marketing is like wrong. So I also think it disincentivizes, or rather it incentivizes certain behavior that I don't agree with, because like I'm definitely a quality over quantity person. And I think if you run an agency or you're an individual that's like, we're going to get you this many impressions and stuff, it automatically kind of incentivizes you to post more often. And I don't necessarily align with that. So I just think that you have to be, my strategy is like, this is a long-term play and it's about relationships and engagement and who the right people are that you're connecting with. And I don't try to just be like month over month, we got this many impressions, because I just think that's not a good way to track like success.
Totally. Question there, actually, like now that you're, working with founders, I'm sure you get clients who kind of get impatient, or because content is a long game, right? Like we know this, but like often founders don't. And it's kind of a tricky position to be in because obviously like you want them as a client, new business is always great. Right. And yeah, like I'm curious how you have that conversation with your clients. Like, do you like set expectations on day one being like, hey, this is going to be a long-term thing. And like, let's be patient here.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think one of the advantages I have, not to sound like braggy or anything, but I think like a lot of my clients are coming to me specifically because I've been like kind of the Andreessen Horowitz model, like signaling what I stand for through my own social media. So a lot of people are seeing my posts and being like, I agree with you. And I talk about these things a lot about like quality over quantity, not going nuts, like all those things. And I feel like they also inherently want a little bit of like Andreessen Horowitz magic. So like there's certain things that they're coming to me for. But yes, I definitely back them way off of that conversation immediately. Like I say, like, of course, we're going to track these things. We're going to pay attention to them. But all it is information. Like it's information about what we need to try more of, what we need to try less of. But it's trial and error. I always say you need at least 3 months of doing something consistently to even really see if it's paying off. So when people get overly hung up on like, this posted this many impressions, but this posted this many impressions, I'm kind of like, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Like, let's keep going. You know, like it's just, I just don't believe in trafficking in that. And I think my clients like mostly know that. And my other feeling is like, as you said, like, of course, new business is always good. But again, not to sound like any type of way, but like part of why I'm keeping it small is because I'm not constantly chasing clients and I'm not selling. Like if we have fewer clients, but they're amazing clients and they are aligned with us and we are rooting for them over the long term, like that's what I'm going for anyway. So I don't need like 25 clients, you know? And if a client is automatically like, I really care a lot and like my post didn't go viral, I would be like, I am not for you. Like, let's, you know, go our separate ways. That hasn't happened, but you know, like that would be what I would do because I just don't believe in doing that. And I try to say like, I'm also not doing every single post for them. A lot of the times they're doing some and I'm doing some. And so I'll also say like, go for it. Like if you want to experiment with stuff, if you think you can achieve virality, like try it. And a lot of the times they see it's not as easy as you think. And so what they're coming to me is more for like the quality, the signaling, like the showing up with a bit of like maturity and let's say like late stage founder energy. Like I'm trying to give them a little bit of like polish is the wrong word because I believe in raw social media, but a little bit of I don't know, like 5-star end of more further along in your journey, ready to exit energy.
No, I love that. And I feel like what you said about like your content self-selecting for the right clients, I think that makes total sense, right? Because like you filter folks based on the content you put out and the ideas you put out. And that's kind of what you want to do for founders as well.
Exactly. And that's what they should be doing for investors. That's what they should be doing for collaborators. Like that is the best thing you can do on social media, I think, is just be true to who you are and say it loudly and say it over and over because people need to associate you with a thing. And like, for me, I'm like quality over quantity, high level of taste, 5 stars. Like that's what I'm offering. And there are plenty of people out there that have like a more aggro, like numbers go up energy. Right. And like, I'm not, and I have very good reasons for not being. And so, yeah, I'm just like, you can definitely find that, like, go for it. Yeah.
I feel like obviously every platform has its like specific vibe, right? Like what you said before. And sometimes like being your authentic self and the vibe of the platform can be like misaligned. Or, okay, let me rephrase that, right? Like I feel like every individual is like multivariate, like they have a lot of different aspects to their life. And over time, like obviously social rewards a certain kind of behavior. That's just how algorithms work. And I'm curious, like if you're in favor of like just completely like being your authentic self with everything that entails. So like, I don't know, maybe one day I'm posting about my startup, the second day I'm posting about some tennis match I played, etc., etc. Like it can be totally random, like personal life, etc. Or does it have to be like, hey, like, okay, this is our industry, this is our vertical. Let's at least post content that's kind of relevant and are adjacent to what our audience likes. Like, are you like more audience focused, or is it more like, okay, like if this feels like it's a genuine expression of who you are, go for it?
Yeah, my general philosophy around this is that you should have like 3 to 4 content pillars, like things that you talk about consistently. Ideally, they're related to your business, but I think one of them can also just be like your experience as a founder or as an executive or as a person. And that includes, I usually say my rule of thumb is like things that you'd be okay talking to someone about on an airplane, like your family, your travel, nothing like super controversial unless that's your brand. But so I usually say, say you have 3 to 4 content pillars, 2 or 3 of them would be strictly related to your business. And the other one might be who you are as a person, because I think that's extremely valuable. And then you don't even have to stick to that 100%. Like I usually say like 80% content pillars, 20% other stuff is fine. And then my other thing that I usually think about is when you're saying about feeding the algorithm, I did a whole video on this actually, because I think it's a really important topic. Like this came up a lot in news too, because people would be like, why would we change, the best stories will always be the best, and like the best headlines will always be the best, and like why would we change things for each platform? Like that's stupid. And what I say is like, all you're doing really, like, headlines have stood the test of time. The first line of a novel has stood the test of time. Like these are not new concepts, right? Like it's basically the difference between telling an interesting story or saying, I don't even care if you read this, right? So it's like, these are actually ancient concepts of like, people used to be like verbal storytellers. And if they started out with like, hey guys, not a lot happened this week, like no one would listen, right? Like you have to play to the algorithm in a sense, but that doesn't mean that I'm like, it's Mr. Beast and we make thumbnails that look a certain way. Like I think that there's a very tasteful way to do good storytelling, good hooks, putting things, if you give me two versions or I edit a version, one version might be like super dense and boring, and one version might keep you reading through it. And that doesn't mean that we take out the knowledge or dumb ourselves down or make it for everyone. It's not for everyone. Like even at Andreessen Horowitz, like the goal was to be technical. We were never saying like, this is for the masses. Like, let's, and I think that's changed a bit over time, but like our strategy was stay technical, like use the technical terms. We would say Mark and Ben instead of Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, because it's like, if like that's what we're going for, right? And so I think founders can use a lot of those same principles where it's like, it's just about making something interesting. It's not about completely changing it and making it appealing to every single person on the planet, because that shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any like mistakes you see founders making? Like I know you've worked with a bunch of founders across different like stages of their careers. Like any like common patterns that stand out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one would be trying to do everything. Like I think trying to be on every single platform, it just gets really overwhelming and you burn out. So I think I'm a really big advocate for picking one and really nailing it before you even think about adding anything. I also think there's so much information out there about social. And now obviously people are like asking ChatGPT and doing all these things. And it's really hard to know like who to listen to. So in some ways, I actually like to work with founders that are like, I trust you and I'm willing to follow your advice, versus founders that are like, I read this random thing, like, and it's like, okay, that's great. But like, I don't even know who that person is and they don't know anything about tech, So it's like, I think that can actually be a mistake in some ways to try to do it all yourself and like, you're just reading a lot of information and you don't know what to trust. Like it's not really a mistake. It's not their fault, but I just think you can get really confused if you're following like standard advice when it doesn't necessarily work for your industry. And then I also think it's kind of what we said before, which is like spending way too much money on this stuff. Like spending more money, I have seen this over and over and over and over. Spending more money does not result in a better product and a better like launch or a better number of impressions on something. Like you can self-film something and make it very interesting, and that would cost you like pretty much $0, or you can hire a full crew and do a whole thing. And if you have money for that, that's great. It's a certain look, but that's all it is. It's just a different type. Like it doesn't mean that it's better. So I just think that's something to keep in mind. Like you have to be really strategic and efficient about where you're putting your resources when it comes to social, because you can misalign that and then you get nothing from something that you think is going to be like so worth it.
For sure. The way I put it is it's almost like a golden age for the lazy creator, because there's almost an added premium for things being lo-fi, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, that's what's popular for sure.
For sure. Like actually like make a typo and that's good
yes.
for you,
Yeah, I made a whole video on how one of the most popular things right now is a screenshot of a document. Like that is like the social asset right now. Like, and that like, it's always evolving and changing, but like that is having a major moment. Like literally recap something or like, put your thoughts down in a literal Google Doc, black and white, don't zhuzh it up in Canva, like write it out just like you would, screenshot it and put that as the asset with either like your LinkedIn or X post. I guarantee you that will outperform something that you spent thousands of dollars on. Like it just will. So it's just like, you have to have some strategy to it.
Yeah, love that. Any other examples out in the wild that you're seeing that like caught your eye? Like one thing that stands out is like those, like just front camera videos of like founders walking down the street, talking about like just like heading to their office, talking about like what's coming up for their startup. That's like super cool. Anything else that you're seeing that's like interesting?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that in-person events are like really coming back. So I think that anything around sort of like people can do event social media really poorly. I love event social media. That's like actually my favorite thing to do. But when you do it, you need to focus on takeaways and learnings and stuff. Like I think a common mistake I see is people just being like, I went to this conference, here's a pic of me. And it's like, great. But like what a good post would be is if you go, you take some pictures with other people and stuff. But then when you write about it or you talk about it in a video, you say like, this is what people are talking about now. And like, multiple speakers said this, and like this is what I feel like is going on. So I think translating sort of your experiences into takeaways that other people can get value from. I saw another sort of rule the other day that I loved, which was the 9-to-1 rule that an author called Christina Farr talks about. She has a new book called The Storyteller's Advantage, and she says for every one thing you post about yourself, you should be posting 9 things that add value for other people. And I absolutely love that and agree with it. And so I think in-person events can be a great source of that value, things that you're reading, whatever those things are. But I think there's a big emphasis now on it's not a sales channel. It's for you to connect with other people, for you to share, for you to put knowledge out there, for you to put value out there. And naturally people will follow you because of that. But I think that's a bit of a flip where it's like, why would I give away this knowledge for free? But it's like, because that's why people will follow you, not because they want to hear every single company milestone that you hit. Like, the people that love you will care about that, but that's not how you will grow an audience, right? So I think if you keep that in mind and say, I'm going to give as much value as I possibly can, even if it's lo-fi, even if it's a summary of something, even if it's a quick video that I shot after going to a talk, like that is where I'm really seeing a lot of founders like actually gain traction, is because they're not just talking about themselves, but they're creating a community around them that's like, we're all trying to figure this out. Like, what's your tech stack? What are you reading right now? What's the best podcast you're listening to right now? Like, people want to share that stuff. So I think giving that value is like another thing that I'm very big on.
For sure. No, yeah, that's a great one. Before we close, I wanted to kind of talk about your process as well. Like when you work with founders, like, yeah, how do you work with founders? I'd love to like kind of get into that a little bit before we wrap.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that is why I want to keep the agency boutique, because everything is very white glove. Like I'm having conversations with them individually, scoping things individually, working with them the ways they want to, whether that's on Slack, whether that's on email, whether that's on text. Like I'm keeping everything how they would like it to be, which was very much how I worked at Andreessen Horowitz. It's hard. It's very hard. I don't necessarily recommend it. I understand why agencies have a more standard package and like say we start with this call and then that turns into this and then I write 5 posts for you a week. Like I understand that, but I don't personally believe in it. So I will see if I can sustain it. I really hope I can. I have now 2 great employees that are working with me that also function in this way. So right now it's much more about like really being a partner for them and cheering for them and understanding their business. Like I think that's another thing that hopefully sets us apart, is that I'm not just thinking about my business and like how your business can benefit my business. Like I am a true supporter and cheerleader, whether that means at the beginning you don't have a lot of money. I get that. I'm not going to be like keep pushing you to give me more money. It's not about my business, it's about yours. Like you have launch day. I'm so excited for you. Genuinely. I'm going to send flowers. I'm going to be like in the front row. Like I am supporting these people in their dreams. And like, that's what makes me really passionate about it, is like, nothing makes me happier than when it goes off really well and they're so happy and they're like, I heard from so many people and like my launch day went amazing and all of these things. So it's not about just like the numbers and the like standard systems and like how much can we automate? How much can we just like not talk to each other? Like it's a much more personal relationship, because it's like I'm not a fractional social media manager, but I feel like that's like almost the point that I'm at, where it's like I'm part of your team. Like I'm not just like, here's my standard materials. It's like, I want to know what your company does and how you make money, and I'm going to understand every single part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Like what I'm seeing actually is the rise of like fractional plus almost, which is like, you're not like purely fractional. You're like kind of fractional, but with like a very, very lean team that's kind of helping you with some of the first mile and last mile stuff.
I think that's like a perfect description of what I'm doing, because I'm still hands-on with everything, but yeah, I'm not necessarily writing the first draft. I might be editing the last draft, but like my team members, I've been working with them so closely that the first draft looks pretty close to what I would write anyway. You know, like it's about like training all of us to be on the same page about like what we do and what quality looks like. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to see a rise of this happening quite a bit. Like even like just based on like previous conversations on the pod, I feel like there's like a pattern of, journalists kind of then going into tech and then venture and then like leaving venture to start their own thing. And everyone's kind of trying this like lean.
There's other people that have had the exact same career trajectory. Ooh.
What a surprise. Yeah. No, I mean, but it's incredible to see, right? Like, it's so encouraging, honestly, to see this. And I feel like founders win in this model. Like, even Rastra, if you think about like what Lulu is doing, like kind of similar, right? Like, where it's a super small team and they're doing like really like high leverage work. So that's cool. All right. Last question, which I always ask, is like any books, recommendations, like podcasts, any of that's kind of like inspired you or helped you become a better storyteller, or like something you recommend founders read?
Yeah, to be honest, it's like non-tech content. Like I read novels, like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them do too. I just mean like, I just have a big appreciation for good writing in general. Like these are going to be some weird references, but like I love theater. I love musicals. I've always loved Lin-Manuel Miranda, like way back, like when he wrote In the Heights. Like I'm still reading like classic novels, newer novels. Like I think watching prestige series, Mad Men is my favorite show of all time. Like I'm not saying I have the best taste in the world. I'm more just saying like getting out of the bubble, I think is something that's really good, because if I said All In, you'd be like, obviously we all listen to All In. Like it's not about like living in the same place. It's actually about touching grass and not like just living in the same place. So that's one of the things I loved about living in New York. Like you were just exposed to so much culture and so much all of the time. And
it's like less tech centric, I guess. Like you have like, everything's happening in New York. So like,
exactly. Yeah. I think that's really important to like not just be reading and listening to all the same stuff, because then we all sound the same and we say the same things and the same slang and the same everything. And I think there's a big advantage to being like, let's not do that. And what else is out there? So
yeah, it's almost like a weird combination of you kind of need to be exposed to it, obviously, and also not be exposed to it to kind of poke fun at it,
That's
like,
yes, I think that's the sweet spot for sure.
Yeah.
Like I consider myself reporting from the front lines of tech, but not truly being part of it. And I think that's kind of a good niche.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. Maria, thank you so much for taking the time. This is fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I so appreciate it.